There was once a rabbi who got up to speak Shabbos Hagadol. He looked around the room and sat back down. The people, bewildered, turned to him and said, "What happened? It's a Shabbos Hagadol drasha." The rabbi said, "The Gemara says, Shoyalin v'darshan, b'hilchos hachag." People ask, and then the Rav darshans. I looked around the room, no one asked any questions, so I sat down. So this year, instead of doing a whole overview of Hilchos Pesach, which we can do after davening, for those who are interested, I'm going to focus here on the shoyal and on the questions, the key questions that people were asking this year. Milk does not need a hechsher for Pesach as long as it was purchased before Pesach. Cosmetics that are not going to go in or on your mouth don't need to be have a special hechsher either for Pesach. Bedikas Chametz is 9:07 p.m. and for a half hour before there's no work that will lead to distractions. There will be a pickup in Southfield 7 a.m. on Monday, which you should throw your garbage out then. And if you live in Lathrop Village, there is a pickup anyway on Monday. That's when garbage is always picked up. If you did not kasher your kitchen, you can still do Bedikas Chametz. And if you didn't participate in Hagolas Kalim that we had on Sunday, you can do it yourself with a clean pot that hasn't been used for 24 hours by boiling it and putting whatever you want to kasher, a knife, a becher inside. Speaking of Bedikas Chametz, we mentioned on Sunday in the Archekala that it is really derabanan because medaraisa bebittel ba'alma sagi. Once you do bittel, you nullify the Chametz verbally and mentally. You've satisfied the biblical requirement, the doraisa requirement for tashbisus armin batechem, to get rid of the Chametz. And so at that point, Bedika is just derabanan shema yavo. And so this is a few important halachas here. The bittul needs to be done in a language you understand. So you could say it in Aramaic, but then you should definitely say it in English to make sure you understand it and mean what you say. And the whole cleaning of chametz, which is the preparation for bedika of chametz, is guided by this principle of shema yav la'achlo, cleaning for Pesach. And as we mentioned it when I spoke to the women last week, it's probably a little late now for this. It's not spring cleaning, not to get every piece of dust out of your house. It is to get rid of edible chametz. If you have a pretzel that's under the fridge, that's something that you're not going to eat on Pesach. It doesn't need to be removed. You were mevatel it, and you're not going to come to eat it. Similarly, crumbs that are in sefer, if you to shake out the svarim. I mean, people have different minhagim, but in terms of the halachas, is to shake out sefer for the crumbs. If you're going to be learning that sefer at the table, then that's the right thing to do. So in case something comes out and goes into the food and ends up being eaten. But if you're not going to be learning the sefer at the table, it's not something that you need to do. And when the Rambam talks about bedika and bittul, the Rambam is very clear, like we said from the Gemara, that bittul is the oraisa, bedika is the rabban. And then the Rambam gives a case. What if you had 9 piles of matzah, 1 pile of chametz, and a mouse takes a piece from one of the piles, you don't know which one, and the mouse runs into a house that was baduk, that was already inspected for chametz. And because of the special din in the Gemara of kavua, kemechza mechza, that when the suffix originates in the original state of the item, so you had here stationary piles of matzah and chametz, it has the status of mechza al mechza. So the Rambam says it's considered like a 50-50 suffix, and that maybe that 50% chance that what the mouse took into the house was chametz, 50% chance that what the mouse took into the house was matzah, and therefore what do? The Rambam says what you do is you should check. And the question is, it's a suffix derabanan. Asks the Ravid, when you have a suffix, whether something is obligated whether there's an obligation to do something, then if that obligation is a biblical obligation, then you have to err on the side of chumrah, and you do it. But if it is only a rabbinic obligation, then you err on the side of kula, to be lenient. So wouldn't this be an example of something that is a suffix derabanan? Because once you did bittul, the whole concept of bedika is derabanan, and so even if it's a mechza al mechza, if it's a 50-50, if that's the case, why does the Rambam say you have to check it? I think we can all think of an answer here. The Ra'ah, the Maggid Mishnah, brings from the Ra'ah a svara to explain as follows. He says, what is Bedika for? The whole concept of Bedikas Chametz, of inspecting for Chametz, is Tchilasa al Hasafik. What is Bedikas Chametz? A house where you know there's chametz, you do bedikas chametz? No. Bedikas chametz is you clean for Pesach, and now you do a check to make sure there's no chametz there. It's a suffix. From the outset, it's a suffix. The whole nature of the takana, of the institution of bedikas chametz, is that when there is a suffix, whether there's chametz in the house, you have to check. So it's not a suffix derabanan. It's a vadei derabanan. The Rabbanan said that in the case where there's a suffix chametz, you have to check. So that's what you have to do here. It's not even a suffix. But this concept, tchilas al ha-suffix, I think goes to the heart of what cleaning for Pesach, what the Seder night is all about. It is about cleaning out the suffix, the sfeikos, the doubts that creep in throughout the year. A person throughout the year has questions, maybe doubts, and the Seder night is about rekindling, getting back in touch with that basic core of emunah. Get rid of the suffix, to get rid of those doubts. Bedikas chametz al ha-suffix, tchilas al ha-suffix. And the emunah is simple. I'm eating matzah. What does that mean? That means that the Creator of the world took us out of Mitzrayim. It's the meichla dimhei menusa. That's it. It's the bread of emunah. That's it. Now, you might think that it's odd for a meal, a Seder, if the whole point of it is to get rid of the questions, get rid of the suffix, then why is it that the hallmark, the characteristic feature of the Seder is Shiloh, is derech sheila, kedei sheyishalu, is asking questions, manishtana. Isn't it the opposite? It's to resolve, to get rid of the questions. So why do we spend the time creating more questions? The reality is there are two types of questions. The Even HaEzel, B'S Zalman Meltzer, brings a conversation that occurred between some Gaon, some tzaddik, Talmid Chacham, and a person who unfortunately lost his way, left the path of Torah and mitzvahs. And this person, who had thrown off the old Torah mitzvahs, said to the Gaon, he said, I have lots of questions. I have lots of questions of Emunah. I have questions. So the Gaon said to him, if you had sincere, genuine questions, you would find answers to those questions, to better understand things, to get to the bottom of things. The problem is that for you, those questions aren't really questions. They're answers. By you, it's not a kasha, it's a teretz. It's to answer up your way of life. You have chosen to do things outside the bounds of the Torah mitzvahs. You want to do those things, and to justify that, you have a question. It's not really a question, it's an answer. Like the Gemara says, Avodah Zarah was only, initially, so that they could be matir arayas b'farhesya, so that they could live with who they wanted. Same thing. Ulefisha hoitzias atzmai min haklal kafar beker, because he pulled himself out of the klal, therefore kafar be'ikr, therefore he denied. It's not that he had a philosophical question, he was kafar be'ikr, and therefore he decided he's going to leave the path. The opposite. What starts, the starting point, is hoitzias min haklal. He wants to go outside, beyond the pale. He wants to be out of the bounds, out of the limits set by the Torah and mitzvahs. Therefore, kafar be'ikr, to justify it. It's a teretz. It's not a kasha. It's a teretz. It's to answer up. Explain to him why he's acting that way. Rav Kalevsky, the legendary Magid from Ner Yisrael, Zechron Levracha, he brings from the Sefer Afike Yehuda to explain that this is the nuance. If you look closely, the Ben Chacham and the Ben Rasha, they both ask a question. They're both asking, why are we doing this? but it's a different phrasing. In the Chacham it says, Ki yish'alcha bincha, when he asks you. He asks his father, explain to me, we did this last night, why are we doing it? What's the reason? I want to understand more. I want to come closer to the truth. It's a sincere question. The Rasha also asks, Maha Eidos. The Pasuk says, V'haya ki yomru aleichem b'neichem maha avodah zoslechem. He's saying it. It's not ki yish'alcha, it's ki yomru aleichem. He's saying it to you. It's a statement. It's said in the question, but it's a statement. It's a teretz, not a question. A proper question is laced with emunah. Let me give you an example. I read this past week that there's over 10,000 Israeli soldiers who are wounded from this campaign in Gaza. 10,000. Some in their mind, some in their body. Rebbeinu Shalom. Why? What did they do to deserve that? What did we do that our history is defined by this kind of suffering? We mentioned last week a vacation from history. And now we're back from that vacation. You see what's going on in Columbia University, ripping yarmulkes off students. Why? How could this be? That question is a question that screams emunah. A person with no emunah, there's no question. Why? Stuff happens. Wrong place at the wrong time. No question. It's a question that screams out emunah. The answer to the question, we may not always know. But what some say is, in this galus, why is this night so dark and so long? And this suffering and the torment and the broken minds and the broken hearts and the broken bodies and the broken families. Because on this night, kulanu mesubin, we're sprawled out. We have tefillin, we have glot kosher, but we're relaxed. We're mesubin. We're lethargic. We're just doing things casually. We're not in it. We're not dedicated. We're not fired up. And that's what we need to do. Pesach night. We need to get back in touch with that emunah and fire ourselves up. And as an aside, we're talking about current events. We say V'yisha amdala v'seinu v'lanu. This stood to protect us throughout the generations. The Sfas Emes has a contrarian interpretation. Shelo echad bilvad amar aleinu l'chalasenu, because they didn't stand one. They didn't stand as one, as united against us. That's how we've been able to survive. We saw that. But these attacks from Iran on Eretz Yisrael, imagine if Saudi Arabia and Jordan and the United States were all against us. How much greater the Nisim would have to be. But they're not. They're divided. The enemies are divided. And that itself is a sign of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Matzilenu, Miyadam. Anyone who sees that they send 100 ballistic missiles, over 100 ballistic missiles. A ballistic missile is 40 feet long, 4 feet wide, goes 1,000 miles an hour. It takes 8 minutes to get from Iran to Israel. And not a speck of Jewish blood. And nothing. And the Israelis send 3, and they all find their mark. To see that, and to not see the Yad Hashem, the person has to have their head in the sand. HaKadosh Baruch Hu matzilenu miyadam. And so the night is a night about asking sincere questions that bring us closer to faith, that bring us closer to emunah, that banish the questions that aren't really questions, the questions that are really answers. And there's really a 5th question. There's really a 5th question. People don't ask this question. All the other nights of the year, we don't say Hallel. You never say Hallel at night. The Gemara in Megillah says you can't say Hallel at night. The Pasuk says, Mimizrach shemesh ad mavoya molo shem Hashem, for the time the sun rises till it sets. That's when Hashem's name is praised, not at night. During the day, we say Hallel. Then on this night of Pesach, we say Hallel at night. What's the pshat? Zok te'elagas Sfas Emes. The pshat is because the night of Pesach is the glimmer of the Geula. It is the glimmer of the Yemaisa Mashiach. When the pasuk says about that time, the Laila Kayom Yoir, the night will shine like the day. All the darkness and all the suffering and all the torment and all the broken hearts and minds and bodies and families, that will all be healed. As we read today in the Haftorah, V'zarcha lachem yirei shemi shemesh tzedaka umarpe bichnafeha. The sun will shine then for you. The sun, marpe bichnafeha, that heals with its wings, with its rays. And it will heal all these wounds, inside and out. The doubts, the torment, the suffering. And it will heal all of that. Ma nishtana alayla azeh. This night is different because it's not Laila. The Laila itself is nishtana. It's changed. It's not night, it's day. That's the glimmer of Mashiach that we should all be zochet to taste and to experience in its fullness speedily. B'mher v'yameinu. Amen.